Hey everyone, welcome to GitKon 2022. My name's Shawna O'Neill. I'm a co-founder and developer of a web agency called Dodgy Code. And today I'm here to talk about tearing down project silos. Today we're going to look at what a project silo is, how we can deal with them, and also the assembly line model of project flow, and how that doesn't really work for modern development anymore. So how do silos happen and what are they? A silo happens when a company or a team has pockets of people and resources that are working independently together, but not necessarily with other resources and people across the rest of the project flow. When this happens, it tends to look a lot like maybe a department working amongst itself, or a couple of individuals, or people who are sharing in the same task on a project, but it's not really cross-functional or branching out from that pocket. These silos typically happen when a company experiences rapid growth, perhaps because there wasn't enough time or resources to build underlying processes and structures for people to really collaborate and work outside of those pockets. Sometimes it can occur because of work culture. Generally, the more comfortable people are with working with each other and the more opportunities they're given to leave their bubble or their silo, the more they tend to become cross-functional. Another reason could be entirely on purpose. Sometimes there are rigid separations between departments or groups of people. Sometimes there's project processes that require one group working entirely independently of another. A side effect reason silos can occur is when we over or under define our company or project processes. So this happens when perhaps there's not enough processes defined, and so people create little niches or work entirely solo in a process that works for them, or perhaps not everyone knows how to use the process in the same way, and so you generally find disconnects. The inverse of that is when we over-define a process. What we can expect to happen is people spend too much time and energy and ultimately money trying to adhere to very strict processes. And those processes can often work better for one team versus another. So it tends to benefit one silo over the others. We also see limited tools causing some project silos. If there's not enough tools to foster a cross-functional environment, you'll find people unable to communicate with each other, or perhaps not having enough information to really participate outside of their silo. So when you have a bunch of silos in your project, what tends to happen is the project follows a very linear path. We call this the assembly line model. Your project comes in, it goes through one group, they finish with it, it goes to the next group, they finish with it, and so on. A pretty traditional one for development is, sales, strategy, then design, then development, then QA, then launch, then support. So when we have this flow, what can sometimes happen is sales does its work, it gets the project in, they were focused on selling the project, and then strategy gets it, and there's a little more to the project than sales thought. There's a little more to figure out. There's some exercises to do with the client, there's some materials that are needed, it takes more time, etc., and we start getting what we call project debris. Project debris is all the negative stuff that always occurs during a project. It's the unexpected issues, it's the scope changes, it's everything that changes the original project to require more time and energy. As we collect this debris, what tends to happen in a linear model is it accumulates until we get a bottleneck or until there's a huge issue. Ultimately, this is really not great for our client relationships. It tends to create over time and over budget situations. And overall, we don't want this. So when silos cause this effect, they're a very negative thing. So what can we do to deal with it? Breaking down silos from an internal process standpoint, we want checkpoints. Now, a checkpoint could be a stand-up, it could be a tool, it's whatever you find to facilitate a general check-in and a cross-communication. So when you create a project checkpoint, you are focusing on aligning the entire project flow on schedule, making sure everything's still on schedule, whether the schedule needs to be edited, the budget, whether different components of the budget are over, under, where efficiencies can be found there, the scope, whether the scope has changed, whether the scope change at one phase is going to affect any of the further phases. Having that check-in early on is so important. It can prevent so much project debris from ending up at the end of the project, and the project debris you save is the expensive project debris. So we don't want expensive project debris gathering up at the end of our project. We want to mitigate and support and deal with it earlier on. And most importantly, you can double check your client expectations. So as different groups work with the client's expectations, attitude, and needs is evolving, but the people who talk to them are getting in at different phases. So someone who talks to the client earlier on is going to have a very different viewpoint of the client's goals than someone who talked to them at the mid or end level of the project. So getting together and aligning on what the client expectations are is how you can make sure the entire team is on board. Now, when you do these project checkpoints, you want to avoid pushing issues off for later phases. If you do a check-in or checkpoint and you push off the issues for later checkpoints, you're just facilitating the project debris moving downriver. You want to get that project debris out of the flow at these checkpoints. You also should avoid sacrificing QA and review time. It's very tempting to eat some of the QA and review time to filter back into the working and production time. However, when you do that, you're really creating a weak point in your flow. So making sure that QA and review time is an equal member of the project flow and not a siloed container at the end of the flow is very important. You should also avoid changing plans without buy-in. If you operate in a siloed way, then changing plans is only evaluated to how it affects that silo and that portion of the project. However, it can have cascading effects down the line on other portions of the project. So making sure that there is buy-in and communication on that can break down the walls and the silo of different project phases. You should also avoid making assumptions. When you're working together and not in a silo, you are able to ask and clarify versus making assumptions about the rest of the project or what different needs and requirements are throughout the project. Another way we can break down silos is by implementing third-party tools. So not all the work of breaking down silos has to be internal and an ordeal. There's some excellent tools out there that foster communication, cross-collaboration, and cross-functionality. When you're picking a tool for your company, you should focus on fostering passive communication. Passive communication is things like reading a calendar or seeing files or reading a documentation. It's not actively messaging, emailing, calling, stand-ups, etc. The way apps do this is typically with metadata, project status indicators, colors, tags, etc. That is all things that can give at a glance information and ease the information flow without requiring active communication. Your project tools should work intuitively. You don't want your team having to go against the grain of everything else they're doing in order to use the tool. If your team is entirely in one system and one new tool does not work with that system, it may not be the best for your project. Your tool should have built-in process definitions. Open-ended tools require a lot of setup, a lot of process, a lot of documentation, and figuring out how to communicate all of that across multiple teams without preferencing one group of people over the rest of the people using it. It's difficult to do. So if you can find tools that already have a methodology to them and help give you built-in process definitions so that it's intuitive and easy to use for your end user, then you're going to have much more success than something that you have to write out and define yourself. Providing organized records is another key aspect of these tools. They should have the ability to see, project histories, documentation, being able to find records easily, having it be intuitive where the records and information is stored, how to get to it, and how to share it. Your tool should also coexist with your stack. Developers know what a stack is. For project managers, this is, the other tools in your system. If you're working primarily with one company's products, their other products that integrate it might be a better fit than a competitor's products. If you're working exclusively in things like free open sourceware, having something proprietary that doesn't connect to that could be an issue. So you want to work with the familiarity and the integration capabilities to really streamline and make your processes more efficient. Git Flow. So amongst the big level teams, design, development, etc., particularly when you get to development, you can have silos within that sector, whether it's front-end, back-end DevOps, or UI and integrations, whatever portions of your development team, you probably have more than one person working in a code repository, and they're all having different objectives and focuses on what they're doing. So in order to prevent silos and issues, Git Flow is a methodology you could use. Git Flow involves having multiple branches on a repository. You have a canonical production branch, which is only what is on your live product. You have a development branch, which is typically tied to a staging environment. And from there, you have feature branches where people are doing their active work. This prevents bottlenecks as people are working independently on their branches. And you can add a layer of communication or review process for when those branches get merged into the shared development pipe. So when you do this, you're allowing your developers to use passive communication via the Git information, and even just looking at the branches in a tool like GitKraken and seeing what's going on in the project and how it affects other portions. It means when you merge things in, you'll get notifications of merge conflicts, all useful information that streamlines and prevents issues. So this is a great tool for developers to eliminate project silos. I hope this talk was helpful for you, and I hope that as you continue forward, your projects are silo-free and smooth sailing. Thanks for having me, and enjoy the rest of GitKon 2022.